$8.8 billion pledged, over 200 million internet users, more mobile connections than people. Indonesia was meant to be ASEAN's digital crown jewel. Microsoft staked $1.7 billion. Alibaba, Amazon, and Google followed. Jakarta gave them the keys. 10-year tax holidays, full foreign ownership, and a digital sovereignty law that guaranteed demand. But now, mid-2025, the test begins. Microsoft is pulling back. PLN's grid is still 60% coal-powered, diesel generators hum day and night, hyperscale centers sit half-empty, bleeding cash while waiting for AI clients that haven't arrived. Land prices have doubled, talent costs are surging, and the first exits may come within months. This isn't a story about growth anymore. It's a question of survival. Will this become Southeast Asia's AI backbone, or a billion-dollar graveyard of stranded servers and broken promises?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're diving headfirst, really, into something huge.
Huh?
A kind of modern gold rush, but, not for gold.
Right, not shiny metal this time. Data, pure data.
Exactly, raw data. And we're zooming in on Southeast Asia, where just billions are pouring into these massive data centers.
It's an incredible amount of capital flowing in.
Yeah.
And it's powering, or hoping to power, the whole AI revolution.
But this isn't just, a simple business story. The stakes feel higher, almost like a thriller.
They really are.
Mm-hmm.
Because this deep dive, we're cutting through the hype. We want the raw truth behind Indonesia's data center boom.
Right. Is it this brilliant strategic move, building the digital spine of ASEAN?
Or is it a bubble? He's waiting to pop. A massive speculative bet gone wrong.
That's the tension, isn't it? These two totally conflicting stories.
Absolutely. On one hand, you've got this relentless march of progress, all this potential.
And on the other, these hidden dangers, these vulnerabilities just beneath the surface.
Yeah, things that could bring the whole thing crashing down. It's high-stakes stuff.
Okay, let's unpack that first narrative then. The irresistible force, the gold rush side of it.
The scale is just...
Yeah.
Wow, we're talking global players piling in.
Like who? Give us some names.
Well, you've got Chinese tech giants, ByteDance, TikTok's parent. They pledged something like, what, $8.8 billion for Thailand? A lot aimed at digital infrastructure.
$0.8 billion, that's staggering. And that's just one company, one country.
Exactly, and it sends a signal, right? Alibaba Cloud, they already have 11 data centers across 5 countries in the region. Tencent Cloud has 8.
So they're not just dipping their toes in, they're committed.
Doubling down. And then you have the Western giants.
Yeah.
Microsoft, $1.7 billion just for their Indonesia central region.
Okay.
Amazon, Google, NVIDIA, Oracle. They're all pouring billions in too.
So East and West are basically converging on Southeast Asia?
And it's not just the tech behemoths. Even established legacy players in SEA. Robert Koos's grandson, for example.
Yeah.
They're getting into hyperscale builds in places like Malaysia and Indonesia.
Hyperscale. Those are the really massive ones, right? For cloud giants.
Precisely. The internet scale facilities.
So Indonesia seems to be the real focal point here. Why? What makes it the epicenter?
Well, look at the sheer size of its digital economy. The projection is, what, $360 billion by 2030?
Making it the biggest in Southeast Asia by far.
By a huge margin. But it's not just a forecast. It's happening now.
How so?
Demographics. You've got 353.8 million mobile connections.
Wow. More connections than people.
Yeah. And over 200 million internet users. Think about that. That's more active mobile connections than Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand put together.
So it's not potential, it's active daily use.
Exactly. People are online, they're using e-commerce, fintech, streaming video, constantly.
And all that activity demands data stored close by.
You got it. For low latency, for responsive AI, you need local processing. You can't run Indonesia's AI future from Singapore or Tokyo effectively.
It becomes a necessity, not a luxury. Their digital destiny, you could say.
And the government, Jakarta, they see this clearly. They're not just letting it happen. They're actively engineering it.
Right. The Making Indonesia 4.0 initiative, what's involved there?
It's pretty strategic. They're offering some really generous incentives.
Yeah.
Up to 10-year tax holidays, no withholding tax on dividends, and critically, they allow 100% foreign ownership of data center companies.
Okay, that removes a major barrier for foreign capital.
Huge barrier. But here's the really clever part, I think. The digital sovereignty mandate.
Forcing government data to stay in country.
Exactly. Public sector data must be stored locally.
That creates instant demand, doesn't it? A guaranteed customer base.
Precisely. Provides what they call anchor tenancy. It seriously de-risks these multi-billion-dollar bets for the big global players.
It makes the investment much safer from that perspective.
And it keeps Indonesia's critical data within its borders, which, in today's world, that's a big deal geopolitically.
Speaking of geopolitics, there was that Singapore factor too, right? The moratorium.
Yeah, that was, well, maybe a stroke of luck for Indonesia. From 2019 to 2022, Singapore basically stopped allowing new data centers.
Created a vacuum.
A huge one. And where did all that pent-up demand go? A lot of it flowed straight across the strait to Indonesia.
Especially places like Batam, just nearby.
Right. Batam's Nong Sa Digital Park, it's only 30 kilometers away. Its capacity surged, went past 200 megawatts pretty quickly. It became the designated overflow.
So if you zoom out, Indonesia looks like this key player, this digital swing state.
That's a good way to put it. In this whole U.S.-China tech rivalry, both sides feel they have to invest there.
To secure a foothold, build influence.
Exploit their tech standards, yeah. Indonesia is perfectly positioned to play both sides, really, a strategic prize.
Okay, so that paints a very compelling picture. The irresistible force narrative, growth, strategy, geopolitics, all aligning.
It sounds almost bulletproof, doesn't it?
Almost. Which naturally makes you wonder, what's the catch? Let's flip the coin. Let's talk about the other narrative, the hidden cracks, the bubble theory.
Right, because the warning signs, they're starting to flash.
Yeah.
And not from just anywhere.
Who's sounding the alarm?
Well, how about Alibaba's chairman, Joe Tsai, a guy who knows market cycles? He said, pretty bluntly, I start to see the beginning of some kind of bubble.
Okay, that's direct. What was his specific concern?
People building on spec, basically building these massive, expensive centers, hoping the demand will show up rather than having firm commitments.
Building it, hoping they will come. Risky.
Very. And it's not just him. There were reports early 2025 that Microsoft was pausing or even abandoning data center leases globally.
Including Indonesia.
Including Indonesia. They said they were recalibrating forecasts, doing an AI infrastructure re-examination.
Whoa. If even the giants are tapping the brakes, you have to ask why. What's the underlying problem?
Many point to what you could call the original sin here. The power grid.
Infrastructure reality biting back.
Big time. Indonesia's grid, especially outside the main Java-Bali area, is notoriously unstable. And maybe more critically, it's still 60% reliant on coal.
60%. Wow. That's problematic for companies claiming green credentials.
Hugely problematic. But forget the PR for a second. Operationally, it's a nightmare.
How so?
Constant threat of blackouts, brownouts, forces them to rely on massively expensive diesel backup generators.
Which kills profitability.
Absolutely destroys it. And makes optimizing efficiency, that PUE metric, power usage effectiveness, almost impossible. The grid just isn't reliable or clean enough.
So the investment capital flowed in way faster than the actual grid could be upgraded by PLN, the state utility.
Much, much faster.
Yeah.
And that's not a small problem you can just patch over. It's fundamental.
Okay. Unreliable power. What else? Any other uniquely Indonesian risks?
Oh, yes. The bureaucracy. The infamous Pusat versus Daerah issue. Center versus the regions.
Meaning Jakarta might say yes, but local government holds the real power.
Often, yeah. Getting permits for land, for building, for power connections. It frequently depends on opaque relationship-based dealings at the local level.
That sounds like a recipe for delays.
Yeah.
Huge, unpredictable delays.
Exactly. Projects that should take months can drag on for years. Adds a massive layer of uncosted risk, especially for foreign investors used to, let's say, more predictable processes.
Nightmare scenario number 2. Bureaucratic quicksand.
Right.
And even if you get power and permits, who runs these things?
Good question. There's a serious talent shortage, a human capital void.
Not enough skilled people to operate these advanced facilities.
Not nearly enough local talent with that specific experience. So what happens?
You import expensive expats.
You got it. Which drives up your operating costs significantly. And it sparks a talent poaching war.
Poaching from where? Singapore.
Malaysia.
Yep. The few qualified locals get bid up like crazy, making it almost impossible for smaller local data center players to even compete for staff. It's a real bottleneck. Okay, so power issues, bureaucratic nightmares, talent shortages. This all starts to sound financially shaky.
And that's where you see the most worrying signs now. The financial jitters. Asset values looking detached from reality.
Like what? What are the signals?
It's being called the AI revenue lag.
Yeah.
Billions are being spent now on land, on hardware, on construction.
Based on the promise of future AI clients.
Exactly. A promise that, so far, seems to be materializing much slower than everyone hoped or projected.
So costs are high today, but the revenue is still somewhere off in the future.
Potentially. And if that gap persists, you're looking at catastrophic cash burn, high capex, high energy costs, but no matching income.
And you see this froth in, like, land prices, M&A.
Definitely. Shovel-ready plots getting priced based on pure speculation about future demand. M&A valuations that look very, very rich. It feels like classic bubble behavior, psychology trumping fundamentals.
Irrational exuberance, perhaps.
Perhaps. And then, just to add another layer of uncertainty,
Oh, there's more.
there's the potential wild card, Trump's tariffs.
The possibility of renewed or expanded trade wars. How does that hit data centers?
Well, think about reciprocal tariffs. Maybe 125% between the U.S. and China, impacting practically everything.
So the cost of imported servers, routers, switches.
Even the steel for the buildings themselves. Everything could get dramatically more expensive very quickly.
Forcing even the biggest players, like Microsoft you mentioned, to rethink spending.
Absolutely. They'd have to pivot and be good stewards of their working capital, as the phrase goes. It's an external shock that could puncture any existing bubble pretty fast.
Okay. So we have these two powerful forces colliding. Indonesia's huge demographic pull, its digital future.
Versus the drag of bad infrastructure, tricky bureaucracy, and maybe some dangerous speculative hype around AI.
It really boils down to one massive question then, doesn't it?
Which is?
Will the sheer force of all this global money compel the necessary upgrades? Will it force the grid improvements, streamline the bureaucracy?
Allowing Indonesia to actually become that digital backbone for ASEAN.
Or will the harsh realities on the ground, the outages, the delays, the lagging revenues lead to a painful market crash, a shakeout?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question right now. And the next, say, 24 to 36 months are absolutely critical.
What should you listening be watching for specifically? What are the canaries in this digital coal mine?
Keep an eye out, especially maybe June to September 2025 timeframe. Look for delayed project launches or quiet exits, especially from the second-tier players, maybe smaller local firms or newer foreign entrants.
What else?
Watch PLN, the state power company. Do they start publicly backtracking on grid upgrade promises? Do reports emerge of power rationing, especially in those secondary regions outside Java?
And pricing. Would we see signs there?
Definitely. Look for signs of aggressive price undercutting in the enterprise cloud market. If the big guys are slashing prices, it means they're desperate to fill empty server racks. That's a bad sign.
Any signals from the investment side?
Yeah. Watch private equity. Are they still speculating heavily on land in the key Jakarta-Bekasi corridor? Or are they quietly pulling back? If they get nervous, that tells you a lot.
So multiple signals could point towards a correction phase starting or accelerating.
Exactly. If you see several of those happening together, the market's likely entering a painful adjustment.
Which brings us back to the core theme, the Meridian Doctrine idea. This isn't just about returns on investment.
No, it's much bigger. It's about whether Indonesia pulls this off.
Yeah.
Engineers the digital foundation for the entire region's cloud, AI, everything for decades.
Or does it end up with expensive ghost infrastructure?
Warehouses full of humming servers, burning dirty power, waiting for AI clients who never fully arrived. Stranded assets on a massive scale.
The construction phase, the big build?
Yeah.
That's largely done.
Now the test begins. The real-world stress test.
It's a genuine techno-thriller unfolding. High stakes, huge ambitions, very real risks.
Absolutely.
Makes you think, doesn't it? In this whole game where that line between a boom and a bubble gets so incredibly blurry, what signals might you be missing in your own field? What unseen forces are waiting just off stage? It's worth considering how fast that ambition
Can outrun the cold, hard reality.
Exactly. Something to chew on.
If you want more no-nonsense stories about power, money, and the systems behind them, subscribe to Meridian Channel.